Sir John A Macdonald, our first prime minister. But this story from Blacklocks, I don't
This is the
think
box, if you're
that we're going to
wondering.
see much more honoring our first prime minister across the country. A federal board in a closed door
Pretty funny.
ruling vetoed any new
By the way, it was to protect him. They even wrapped him up in garbage. How about the future? My prediction is that this man on the right here, Doug Ford, brother of Rob Ford, you might know him as the crack-smoking mayor of Toronto, if he ran for the leader of the Conservative Party after Pierre effectively completely crumbles, probably will win in an absolute landslide. It'll be the dawn of a very long Doug Ford reign. And if you don't know, the only thing really preventing that from happening right now is the French language. That's how silly Canada can be sometimes. But Doug speaks really shitty French. And because he speaks really shitty French, he'd have a lot of trouble becoming elected by gaining seats in Quebec who would not trust him, and also being able to participate in French language debates. So if he wants to spend some time and brush up on his French and actually become fully bilingual, he would become, in my assessment, the next Prime Minister of Canada by a landslide. He might even get a majority and would hold power for a very, very long time.
and then instead of doing something about the vandalism, they just boxed him up. It was so bad that Jason Kenney, the premier here in Alberta at the time, said, if you're not going to unbox them, just send them to us. We'll do something with them.
Yeah.
And now, to his credit, although many, many years too late, Doug Ford, the premier of Ontario, has released Sir John A Macdonald, our first prime minister. But this story from Blacklocks, I don't
This is the
think
box,
that we're going to see much more honoring our first prime minister across the country. A federal board in a closed door
Pretty
ruling
funny.
vetoed any new
By the way, it was to protect him. They even wrapped him up in garbage. If you're unfamiliar, if you're an international viewer, John A. Macdonald, considered the founding father of Canada, our first prime minister, was a just rampant racist. He was someone who participated in trying to basically starve Indigenous people to death. He was a racist even by the standards of the time. I know, like, you know, the controversy surrounding the founding fathers in America. Oftentimes people will be like, but those people were slave-owning rapists. And then other people will be like, well, back then, that was quite common, actually, to own a plantation and to own human beings as property. And yes, many people who did that also behaved in ways that I personally might not agree with. But at the end of the day, they are still the founding fathers of America. And we need to stop doing this whole erasure of history. Well, we got the exact same thing here in Canada, where conservatives and right-wingers are constantly just like, he was the founding father, he united the country, he built the railroad that united Canada end to end. And, well, he didn't literally build the railroad. And in fact, a lot of migrant workers and people who were underpaid, and in some cases, weren't paid at all, were responsible for building it. Yeah, you could say that he was one of the architects and pioneers who pushed for there to be the development of a railroad that would, yes, go from one end of Canada to the other in order to try and unite the country through a singular transportation system. That part is true. But again, also just a massive extreme racist that once I think there was a bit of a reckoning in the country, people realized how horrifying the legacy of Indigenous genocide was. They started being like, oh, so why do we have statues of this monster everywhere? And then, yeah, a lot of those statues got defaced, they got pulled down, they got destroyed.
Historic plaques honoring John A. Macdonald as, quote, too polarizing and controversial. Historic Sites and Monuments Board noted in part that Macdonald had opposed Chinese immigration. The board recommended that Sir John A. Macdonald, again, they're judging him by the wokeism of today. He's a man of his time.
That's it.
Yeah.
He should be commemorated by means of information to be made available on the Parks Canada website, and that no plaque be erected.
Again, there's nothing wrong with judging historical figures in terms of should we venerate and honor them today. Like, if someone was horrifying, and by John A. Macdonald standards, he was horrifying by the standards of the time. There were people within the first parliaments of Canada that would remark upon how racist his statements would be, and that's in itself something that should be taught. But in addition to that, there's nothing wrong with looking back and being like, so the people who are on our money were also white supremacists. Why do we do that? Let's explore that. Let's talk about that. This idea of having a fake version of patriotic identity or nationalism where people have to venerate like old slave-owning rapists or genocidal, indigenous-hating freaks like John A. Macdonald, why not just teach the real history of the country? And why not work towards making a better nation that everyone can be proud of, rather than trying to, consistently prop these monsters up as if this is the standard by which we should look to them as heroes. I got some quotes. So, quote by John A. Macdonald: "The great aim of our legislation has been to do away with the tribal system and assimilate the Indian people in all respects with the other inhabitants of the Dominion as speedily as they are fit to change." On starvation, quote, "We cannot allow them to die for want of food. We are doing all we can by refusing food until the Indians are on the verge of starvation, to reduce the expense." Yes. On Chinese immigrants, quote, "If we let Chinamen into the country in any considerable numbers, he becomes a competitor with our working men." And then another quote, "The Chinese are no doubt useful, but the same may be said of the," racial slur, "they are a permanent alien race." He was the creator of the Indian Act in 1876, one of the architects of the residential school system. He had a starvation policy in order to starve indigenous people who lived on the reservations. He implemented the Chinese head tax, which was a tax on Chinese immigrants specifically. Endless amount of horrifying abominations that this man did. Nothing wrong with being like, why do we have statues to white supremacists everywhere? This guy believed in the superiority of the Anglo-Saxon race and spoke about it frequently. He was always bringing that up, sometimes to the horror of his contemporaries, who were also racist. There was a lot of racist white people who were making up the founding fathers of the country. And even amongst them, there was a lot of discussion where it's like, I don't know if you should be talking like that, talking about how, these other races are, savages and mongrels, and they will never be of the pure Anglo-Saxon stock, and only Anglo-Saxon men are going to be the leaders of this nation. If you're a white supremacist today, maybe that stuff sounds awesome to you, and then you're like, oh, okay, so he's a hero. But if you're not, then what the fuck? Just teach the real history. Don't have statues all over the place. And this doesn't just apply to Canada. I mean this internationally. Like, people should actually reflect upon the fact that why is it that we venerate so many horrifying people, from Winston Churchill all the way to the founding fathers of America.
Said the December 12th, 2023 meeting of directors. Every one of these directors should be fired. The minutes were released through access to information.
So him saying that he should assimilate Native Americans into wider culture is genocide? Cultural genocide, yes. So the residential school system, intentionally, the program was meant to get rid of all elements that they deemed to be subhuman or, unworthy of being what they considered to be Canadians at the time. Mothers would have their children ripped out of their arms, forcibly put into these schools for years, where they were physically abused, sexually abused. Many of them died trying to escape the schools themselves. And the ones who survived have now testified that within those schools, they had to erase their language, their legal original names would be changed to white names. They had to forget their culture, their history, their religion, all of that, and then assimilate and become white. The entire purpose of it was to try and, again, erase what he considered the Indian within, and that was to solve, again, the Indian problem. Both, statements by John A. Macdonald, which, again, the horrifying legacy of the country, but not something you should shy away from. Teach it. Teach all of it.
To Blacklocks. Macdonald in 1927 was declared a nationally historic person, you think. Mm-hmm. The designation was considered at board meetings in 2022 and 2023. Its final review occurred in 2023, and the board recommended the following revised statement of commemoration intent for Sir John A. Macdonald. He played a major role, you think, as Canada's first prime minister, but condemned him for suppressing, indigenous resistance in the Northwest, using the disappearance of the bison to force First Nations to take treaties and settle on reserves, disenfranchising Chinese people, and attempting to restrict their immigration.
Yeah, so directly from the House of Commons in 1885, the Chinese have no British instincts or British feelings or aspirations, and therefore ought not to have a vote. The Aryan race will not wholesomely amalgamate with Africans or Asiatics. That was from 1885 as well. The French and the British combined cannot hold their own against the world. The Anglo-Saxon race will never be inferior. Again, the quotes of a white supremacist.
And founding a national system of Indian residential schools, which represented a policy of aggressive assimilation. The 2015.
Yeah, I know about the Columbus stuff, because basically Zoran has a long social media history, like most people, of our age. We've all been on the internet for a long time. There's a picture of him giving the middle finger to a statue of Christopher Columbus that is now being used to be like, Zoran supports, decolonization and stuff. And I'm like, I already love the man. Stop. You cannot make me love the man anymore. Because he's awesome. Zoran is, Christopher Columbus is an absolute monster who, again, was into trafficking children for sexual slavery. If you are defending Christopher Columbus, you are defending that. Who the fuck who has been made aware of how bad Christopher Columbus is in this day and age is going to sit there and be like, oh, okay. I didn't know it was that rough. So you actually, had the whole cutting people's hands off and made them wear it around their neck stuff. So that's not Game of Thrones. That's Christopher Columbus. Oh. And there's actual quotes of him talking about how indigenous children are in great demand for sexual slavery and human trafficking, and many men are interested in children as young as 9 or 10. Other Christopher Columbus quote, and that's pretty fucked up. I don't know. I don't think we should be venerating pedophilic, human trafficking, rapist fucking monsters. I don't think we should be venerating slave-owning rapists. Don't think we should be venerating, white supremacists who starved indigenous children to death as part of his official policy proposals. They're all monsters. They should be taught as monsters, and that doesn't mean that you all of a sudden have to feel guilt for living in your country of origin. How right now there's this big thing, and we saw it a lot with July 4th, where as the U.S. is becoming increasingly fascistic, a lot of people are like, I don't feel pride in being an American, or in the flag, or in the regalia, or the fireworks, that kind of stuff right now. I feel disgusted with my country. Similar things were happening in Canada after there was a discovery, of course, of the obvious horrifying effects of the residential school system in Canada. There was lots of people who are like, I don't want to celebrate Canada. I don't want to be like, I'm proud of my country. And I understand that there's this big thing where it's like, you lefties, especially radical lefties, you're never going to win over the general populace if you come at from a perspective of we need to destroy the nation itself, because there are millions and millions and millions of people who live in the country who have overwhelming amounts of programming and pride in their nation. And if that's the reality, then why don't we start talking about being proud of a nation that actually does good things, that houses the homeless, that builds roads and schools and trains, that builds hospitals, that has free university, that makes housing a human right, that makes food a human right, that no child should ever be hungry, that no child should ever be homeless, that completely eradicates the idea of child poverty, that completely eradicates the idea of child homelessness. I would have way more pride in that. If that was really where the nation itself was directing a lot of its resources into and building upon that. And then once it's actually taking care of its own citizens, instead of working abroad to bomb the fuck out of other nations that are poorer or don't have the same military capabilities so we can extract their resources, we actually tried to help them, in the way that like Cuba exports doctors and sends doctors overseas because they have so many doctors over there. That sounds a lot more inspiring. That sounds like something that you can actually be like, I'm proud of this community, this project, this made up idea of a nation state, because we do beautiful things and we want to export beautiful things. We want to help other people. There's way more pride in that than the idea of venerating monsters, gross ass white supremacist monsters throughout history.
Truth and Reconciliation Commission described as cultural genocide. You know who also played a very important role in Indian residential schools? Jean Chrétien. But I bet you that man's going to get the Order of Canada if he doesn't have it already. I don't pay that much attention to what.
First off, that doesn't make it okay. If you're like this famous liberal politician that a lot of people love and adore, and not me, but some people do. A lot of libs love Jean Chrétien. But if Jean Chrétien was, again, reinforcing and/or enabling residential schools, then that's bad. It's all bad. You can shit on all of them. Why not? You go after Pierre Trudeau, too.
What he's up to today, except to acknowledge that he's still alive. And whenever the Liberals talk about the cultural genocide of the Indian residential schools, I kindly advise them that Jean Chrétien is still alive, and he was the last Indian Affairs Minister to sign off on those things. Oh,
I mean, let's go after Jean Chrétien then. I say go after all of them. Fuck it. Then conservatives, will that please you? Then will we agree on something? Will we be on board with a project?
Don't let this happen to you. Go to serfscoffee.com to order the only end-to-end owned indigenous coffee company that delivers blood-free, conflict-free, and cruelty-free beans right to your door. 0% of people who drink serfscoffee.com have exploded spontaneously. By ordering right now, you get 10% off plus free shipping, and it's the best way to enjoy delicious coffee while not exploding. That's serfscoffee.com, serfscoffee.com.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. This video wouldn't be at all possible without the financial support of all the people whose names you see on the screen right now. And if you want to unlock secret bonus episodes, content that we can't post anywhere else, or get the videos early before anyone else gets to see them, please go on to patreon.com/theserfs. For as little as $1, you can help support this channel and help make more videos like this possible. Our executive producers are Anna Loves Riley, Adrian McCarthy, Bobby Lasers, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Garrett Sandoval, Hagbard Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Political Papi, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Richard Boehm, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demel, Tigwick, Trav, and Words Greenwood. And also, it wouldn't be possible without all the names you see on the screen right now. Again, if you want to help produce this content, it's only made possible through the funding of our patrons. Head on down to patreon.com/theserfs. That's patreon.com